Do you remember the dishes that you ate when growing up? Over the years, we've watched these dishes quietly slip away, replaced by new trends and tastes. But one can't help but wonder, could these forgotten foods be worth another try, or are they better left in the past? Stick around as we uncover 20 middle-class favorites that have vanished from our plates and see which ones just might deserve a comeback. 20. Steak Diane.
For the main course, remember, plate up and spoon the sauce over the steaks. Steak Diane with sauteed potatoes and peas, done.
Let's start off with a dish that brought a bit of flair to the dinner table. Steak Diane. Remember the way your grandma would sear that tender steak in a pan of sizzling butter? It seemed so simple, but it was pure magic. But the real magic? That came from the sauce. A rich blend made from finely chopped shallots, a dash of Worcestershire sauce, a hint of Dijon mustard, a splash of rich beef stock, and a generous pour of cognac. And to finish, a final grind of black pepper that made each bite unforgettable. Sure, Steak Diane wasn't much to look at. Just a humble piece of steak in a brown sauce with a sprinkle of chives if you were lucky. But the aroma? That heady mix of beef and brandy could fill a room and have everyone eagerly gathering around. Back in the post-World War II era, this dish was a symbol of newfound abundance and a taste of continental luxury that had been out of reach for years. During the war, there were serious restrictions on meat and dairy. New York restaurants even had meatless days. But after the war, everything changed. Suddenly, there was plenty of meat and butter, and Steak Diane became a celebration of that abundance. How much did you guys enjoy this steak? But if you think Steak Diane was a wonder, just wait until you hear about the dish that was once as common as chicken, and just as delicious. 19. Rabbit stew. Who else misses rabbit stew? I can't be the only one, that's for sure. Back in the day, rabbits were as common as chickens, but now, it's often thought of as a dish only for those rustic wilderness types or something straight out of an old pioneer story. But back then, a rabbit was for everyone. It showed up in many forms: stews, fried, roasted, or in delightful dishes like fricassee. So, what made this dish so special? The ingredients were simple yet flavorful. Rabbit meat was combined with carrots, onions, celery, garlic, and whatever else you had on hand. Sometimes a bit of potato or mushrooms for that extra earthy flavor, all slow cooked together until tender and juicy. And the result is a meal that's all about family. Back in the 1970s, rabbit fricassee was celebrated for its tender meat and savory taste. And here's a fun tidbit. Monks would consume rabbit during Lent since, for some odd reason, it was regarded as a type of fish. No kidding. While its origins are in French cuisine, the dish was also beloved by the Algonquin people. Even if you've never tasted rabbit before, you'll be surprised by how delicious it can be. When cooked, it resembles chicken in flavor, but with a texture closer to pork. Maybe it's high time the rabbit returned to our dinner plates. What do you think? And speaking of forgotten comfort foods, this next one is a crispy delight that was once the star of backyard picnics and summer parties. 18. Corn fritters. Now here's a treat that takes you way back. Did you know there's actually a National Corn Fritters Day on July 16th? It's true. For years, these mouth-watering, golden, and crispy delights were a staple at backyard picnics. These tasty little bites originated in the southern part of the United States, but can be traced back as far as the 1600s. They were even mentioned in a diary by Samuel Pepys in 1665. So, what makes corn fritters so irresistible? The ingredients are simple: flour, baking powder, a bit of sugar, a pinch of salt, eggs, milk, and of course, those sweet corn kernels. Mix them all together until the batter is just right. Then, drop spoonfuls into hot oil and fry until they're crispy and golden brown. It's a recipe that couldn't be easier. You can enjoy them plain, or if you're feeling a bit fancy, drizzle them with honey or syrup for a touch of sweetness. But don't think of corn fritters as just a side dish. Pair them with pan-fried fish and some veggies on a toasted bun, and you've got yourself an unforgettable fish sandwich. If crispy corn fritters make you nostalgic, just wait until you discover this next dish that adds a bit of indulgence and elegance to the table. 17. Chicken tetrazzini.
Your creamy chicken tetrazzini!
Chicken tetrazzini is a name that brings back memories of potlucks and family dinners. This dish is all about tender chicken or turkey mixed in a rich sauce with spaghetti, baked until bubbly with a golden breadcrumb crust. And that sauce? It's a bit of everything wonderful: sherry or white wine, Parmesan cheese, mushrooms, garlic, onions. You name it, it's in there. Although its origin isn't quite clear, it's said that it was invented in honor of the Italian opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini after her performance in San Francisco in 1905. Chicken or turkey? I don't think anybody really cares. Both work like a charm in this dish. Chicken tetrazzini was basically served as the go-to meal between the 1900s and 1950s to use any leftovers in the house. In fact, a 1948 magazine asked, "Do you have turkey leftover problems?" And the answer was, of course, turkey tetrazzini. It was easy to make and fancy enough to impress guests. A deluxe dish, as one 1938 article put it. But the real heyday came in the 1960s and 70s when it became a dinner staple, thanks to shortcuts like canned soups. It was economical and simple, and somehow still felt a bit special. Maybe it's time to bring this one back. Who knows, it might just wow everyone all over again. But if you're ready for something with a bit more color and a unique taste, our next dish takes a humble root vegetable and turns it into a flavor-packed feast. 16. Borscht. Now, if your meals are all about soup, you might know borscht, a ruby red bowl packed with flavor. This hearty dish begins with a base of sautéed onions, garlic, and carrots in a pot until they're soft and aromatic. Then, in go the chopped beets, cabbage, and potatoes, cooking together for a few more minutes before being drenched in broth and brought to a gentle boil. Let it all simmer until the veggies are tender, then add a splash of vinegar or lemon juice for that perfect tang. Some people like to add beef or pork for an even heartier, more nutritious soup. And when it's time to serve, don't forget to finish it with a generous spoonful of sour cream and a sprinkle of fresh dill on top. Originally, borscht was considered the food of the poor peasants, but over time it spread far and wide, finding its way into kitchens everywhere. It became a staple at family dinners and even special feasts. It's a dish that has stood the test of time. I wonder, would people today be eager to give it a try? What do you think? Speaking of unexpected flavors, this next dish transformed a simple vegetable into a star of stylish dining, and it all started in San Francisco. 15. Celery Victor.
Fresh, crisp celery from Pick and Pay is delicious. We buy the best and make sure it is the best.
Think celery is just a basic, boring vegetable? Think again. Celery Victor might sound like a forgotten name, but back in 1910, it was all the rage, thanks to Victor Hertzler, head chef at San Francisco's famous St. Francis Hotel. It became a hit after being praised in Clarence Edwards' 1914 book, A Bohemian Guide to San Francisco Restaurants. So what made Celery Victor so special? It's an unexpectedly elegant marinated celery salad. You start by simmering celery ingredients in a rich broth, veal, chicken, or beef, depending on your taste. Once tender, the celery is chilled in a zesty marinade with a splash of citrus or vinegar and tossed with mild peppers for added flavor. For a little extra crunch, it's sometimes served on a bed of crisp lettuce. It's a simple dish, but with a unique twist that makes it truly memorable. So why not surprise your family next weekend with a recipe that once wowed diners in old San Francisco? Who knows? It might just become a new favorite. And if you think that was amazing, wait until you hear how a battlefield victory inspired a dish that became an instant classic. 14. Chicken Marengo. There's something about the mention of chicken that just melts my heart. Who else loves chicken? Now, have you heard of chicken Marengo? If not, let me tell you a story. Legend has it that after Napoleon defeated the Austrians near the village of Marengo in Italy back in June 1800, he was absolutely starving, and who wouldn't be after a day like that? So, his chef wasn't ready to prepare a meal, so he had to get creative with the limited available ingredients. And what did he find? A chicken, some eggs, tomatoes, a few truffles, and even some river crayfish. Turning simple ingredients into a dish for the emperor, what we now call chicken Marengo, only involved a bit of culinary improvisation. It's a flavorful combination of pan-fried chicken topped with a rich sauce made from tomatoes, mushrooms, garlic, and white wine, with the added surprise of crayfish and a fried egg on top. Quite the unique blend, wouldn't you say? Over the years, chicken Marengo has somehow drifted off our home menus, but imagine bringing it back. Imagine how amazing it would be to serve such a delicious meal with your family. So next time you're in the mood for something different, why not try chicken Marengo? Trust me, you'll enjoy every bite. Chicken Marengo may have been born from a battlefield, but the next dish on our list brings a touch of British charm with a name that might just fool you. 13. Welsh Rarebit. Some call it Welsh Rarebit and others Welsh Rabbit. It all refers to the same thing. But hey, don't look for a rabbit here. You won't find one. Instead, this is a traditional Welsh favorite made with a savory sauce of melted cheese, blended with ingredients like mustard, ale, Worcestershire sauce, and a pinch of cayenne pepper. It's served hot, poured over slices of toasted bread, or sometimes served in a chafing dish, much like a fondue. Checking back, the first recorded reference to this dish was shown in 1725, when it was called Welsh Rabbit. It's ideal for a main course or light but satisfying meal, especially when paired with a crisp green salad. But when you want to make it even better, add a poached egg on top and you've got a golden buck, which is simple, comforting, and very delicious. And while Welsh Rarebit is all about simplicity, with a savory twist, our next dish takes us back to a sweeter time. A nostalgic mix that's both quirky and unforgettable. 12. Ambrosia Salad. This mid-century salad brought together canned mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, mini marshmallows, shredded coconut, and whipped cream or sour cream. It was a mix that seemed a bit strange at first, but always felt just right on holiday tables or at summer picnics, promising a taste of something almost heavenly. There were so many variations of ambrosia, and every grandmother seemed to have her own spin. I've seen versions with cottage cheese, others with sour cream or vanilla pudding, and some that skipped the nuts altogether. But they all had the essentials: citrus fruit, coconut, and a creamy, tangy base. I have to say, I really miss ambrosia salad and hope it finds its way back to our tables. There's something comforting about its simple joy. Who wouldn't want a little taste of that family magic again? But if you think ambrosia was a fun addition to the family table, wait until you remember these wiggly, jiggly creations that defined the 1950s and beyond. 11. Jell-O molds. American dining was once dominated by Jell-O molds. These creations, which are also known as Jell-O salads, were far from anything ordinary. Filled with sweet fruits, grated carrots, cottage cheese, marshmallows, and even crunchy pretzels or nuts, they were the kind of dishes that made meals exciting to have together. It all began during the late 1890s with the creation of Jell-O, and the first Jell-O mold appeared in 1904 in Pennsylvania, thanks to Mrs. Johnny Cook. However, it was in the 1950s that these jiggly masterpieces really came to the limelight and became the focus of every family meal, party, and other social events, including the major holidays. I miss those days, don't you? Maybe it's time for a Jell-O mold comeback. Jell-O molds brought a colorful touch to the table, but for a warm, comforting start to the day, nothing beats this next dish, a typical breakfast that kept us going. 10. Cream chipped beef on toast, SOS. Remember when cream chipped beef on toast was almost like breakfast every day in your childhood? Some people have it as part of their childhood memories, having it in the morning, while others probably ate it for the first time in the army. The recipe was simple yet satisfying. Thin slices of dried beef simmered in a creamy white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk, then poured generously over a slice of toasted bread. It was warm, filling, and, most importantly, budget-friendly. A perfect start to the day for families looking to stretch their dollar. My mother used to make it often, and instead of the traditional dried chipped beef, high in sodium and often pricier, I found myself using those little packages of pressed beef you could get for around 75 cents. 2 ounces of that, mixed into a basic white sauce and poured over toast, and there you had it. A meal that was easy on the wallet and comforting in its own right. So, what's your take on this one? Did you love it? Speaking of convenience, If you loved a quick breakfast, you might remember the golden age of TV dinners, when dinner was served in front of the tube. 9. TV dinners.
Swanson, and only from Swanson. A delicious new difference in frozen dinners. It's an added home-style touch. Look, cranberry sauce, new in the turkey dinner. Cocktail sauce in the fried shrimp dinner. And hashed brown potatoes, new in the beef dinner.
For some reason, I know I am not alone when it comes to craving the good old TV dinner. This was a mealtime staple that's now mostly a familiar relic of the past that is occasionally brought up in conversations. But do you know that the first TV dinner could actually be one of the most creative ideas in utilizing the Thanksgiving leftovers ever? In 1952, Swanson had a problem. After the holiday, there was a surplus of about 5,200,000 pounds of turkey. They put the meat in refrigerated rail cars, and they began to think of ways to save the meat. The solution came from Jerry Thomas, a Swanson employee. On a business trip, he noticed the new metal trays airlines were using to serve warm meals. He thought, why not bring this same concept to American homes? And just like that, the idea for the TV dinner was born. 2 years later, Swanson rolled out its first Thanksgiving dinner in a box, featuring turkey, gravy, buttered peas, sweet potatoes, and cornbread dressing, all packed into a segmented heat-proof tray. The packaging even had fake dials and knobs printed on it, designed to resemble a TV set, because these meals were meant to be enjoyed in front of the newest household gadget, the television. You could just put the tray in the oven, and in less than 20 minutes, you would be ready to gobble up the whole meal. Well, that was fast, easy, and felt futuristic, which was perfect for those families that were looking for something convenient and exciting. TV dinners might have been the perfect solution for a quick meal in front of the screen, but before that, there was a dish that brought together the best of the harvest in one bowl. And it's got a history you won't believe. 8. Succotash. Who doesn't love corn? If you do, you might just fall in love with succotash, a dish that celebrates corn in the most delicious way. This old-school favorite dates back to the 17th century, but you don't see it much on dinner tables these days. The name comes from the Narragansett word mizikquatash, which means boiled corn kernels, and that's where its story really starts. So how is it prepared? Succotash combines sweet corn, tender lima beans, and whatever other vegetable one can find: onions, tomatoes, bell peppers, turnips, or the like. At times, it can also have little cubes of corned beef or pork in order to add a little touch of salty flavor. For some, this recipe takes them back to college days, when you had to make the best out of whatever was available in the kitchen. Honestly, I'd love to see it make a comeback. Succotash was all about fresh flavors, but our next dish brings back memories of deli counters and a taste that stood out from the rest. 7. Olive loaf. A bit like Italian mortadella, with its cubes of pork fat, this classic American deli meat had its own twist. A mix of pork, chicken, and beef, with whole green olives dotted throughout. Each slice had that burst of briny flavor and a little pop of color that made it special. Do you remember how your cousins used to come over to visit your mom, and she would take out a pack of olive loaf from the fridge? It was always there for all those short instant sandwiches which, for some reason, were liked by everybody. The taste was not something I or anyone I know could describe as usual, bologna or ham. It was a little different, but it tasted perfect, especially when accompanied with some mustard or mayo. However, as time went on, olive loaf lost its place in the lineup of delicious deli cuts. Nowadays, it is hard to spot it in grocery stores around society. However, for some of us, it takes us down memory lane to those famished family lunches, summer picnics, or impromptu snacks when everyone was together. I miss those moments and that familiar taste. Would you want this back on our tables? Olive loaf may have been a deli favorite, but the next dish on our list was a true American classic that found its way from wartime rations to dinner tables across the country. 6. Salisbury steak. Most of us recognize Salisbury steak as a familiar comfort food, or more likely, a throwback TV dinner staple, though its origins are far more interesting. This dish was first introduced during the Civil War, not as a food offering, but as a remedy. Dr. James Henry Salisbury, who pioneered the germ theory, labeled his strict diet of beefsteak and coffee as efficient in treating almost all illnesses that were associated with digestion. He said that beef was easier for soldiers to digest than root crops, and hence the Salisbury steak came into existence. The original Salisbury steak consists of ground beef mixed with ingredients like breadcrumbs, onions, and eggs to help bind the meat together. The patties are then pan-fried or grilled and served with a thick, rich brown gravy made from a combination of beef broth, Worcestershire sauce, and flour to create that savory flavor. It appeared on the menu of the British troops during World War I, and due to its high-calorie content and easy preparation, it appeared on the dinner table of Americans for several decades. And it was not until the middle of the 20th century that Salisbury steak became a regular guest in frozen TV dinners as a quick and satisfying meal for families with no time to cook. And while Salisbury steak brought a rich, satisfying flavor to the table, the next dish elevated Sunday dinners with its touch of elegance and creamy, cheesy goodness. 5. Haddock Mornay. Remember those Sunday dinners when your mom or grandma would bring out a bubbling, cheesy dish straight from the oven? The whole kitchen was filled with the comforting smell of melted cheese and fresh seafood. That was haddock Mornay, a little bit of elegance at the family dinner table, especially in the 1950s and 1960s. So, what made haddock Mornay so special? It starts with tender haddock fillets that are gently poached and then coated in a rich, creamy bechamel sauce, a delicious mixture of butter, flour, milk, and grated cheese. Sometimes a hint of mustard or a splash of white wine would be added to give the sauce a little extra depth and flavor. But the magic doesn't stop there. The fish is topped with a generous layer of breadcrumbs and grated cheese before being baked to perfection, creating a beautiful golden crust that adds a satisfying crunch to every bite. Haddock Mornay was usually served with steamed veggies or a heap of fluffy mashed potatoes. It was fancy, sure, but it still felt like home, a dish that brought everyone to the table with a smile. I can't help but miss those days when a dish like this could make any meal feel special. Maybe it's time to dust off that old recipe and bring haddock Mornay back to our tables. Haddock Mornay brought elegance to the dinner table, but if you're ready for something a little more adventurous, our next dish is sure to leap right onto your plate. 4. Frog legs. I know. You're probably thinking, frog legs? Really? And yeah, it might sound a little out there, but hear me out. While you might take this as a weird food back then, the English were actually munching on these little guys a whole 8,000 years before they ever hopped onto French plates. Crazy, right? Well, if you've never eaten frog legs before, they are somehow similar to chicken and fish, but delicate, light, and way more versatile than you might think. And frying them is the real deal. Just imagine tender frog legs, dusted with seasoned flour or cornmeal, sizzling in hot oil until they're crispy and golden. Accompanied by a slice of lemon or a spoonful of tartar sauce, you've got this great combination of flavors and a delightful crunch with every bite. Sure, this might sound a bit odd to some, but frog legs are a lot more edible than you think. And who knows, they might even become your favorite. Frog legs may have been an adventurous choice, but the next dish on our list has been a coastal favorite for centuries. 3. Oyster stew. Oysters can be a bit of a love it or hate it kind of thing, but this goes back to American history. In the later part of the 1800s and early 1900s, oysters were so numerous that they were sold on the streets as a snack. They were generally considered food because they were so abundant along the coastlines. If you are from the coastal area, then you will know how tasty a properly cooked oyster stew can be. It's simple. There are basically a few ingredients necessary for this dish: fresh oysters, fresh milk, some salt and pepper, nice cold butter, and a bit of garnishing of green onions. And believe it or not, it became a bit of a holiday tradition, especially around Christmas Eve. These days, oysters can be rather a love-hate thing. People do love them or hate them depending on other things. But here's the thing. For about 9,000 years, the American people have been eating oysters. Long before oysters were considered a delicacy, Native Americans in this region were shucking and eating them. Oyster stew warmed us with a taste of the sea, but if you're craving something a bit more exotic, Our next dish brings a burst of Mediterranean flavors right to your kitchen. 2. Chicken marbella. If you have never tried a chicken marbella recipe, let me assure you, this is one of the most amazing recipes that have been enjoyed for years. This dish was first introduced in the 1982 Silver Palette Cookbook by Julie Rosso and Sheila Lukens. In the 70s, Lukens was operating a catering company in Manhattan, and one day, Rosso, a regular at her catering business, decided to launch a food shop with her in New York City. Chicken marbella soon became one of their signature dishes, catering to Jewish holidays and Shabbat dinner tables for years. For those who haven't had the pleasure, traditional chicken marbella starts with marinating the chicken in a flavorful mix of prunes, olives, capers, garlic, olive oil, and oregano. Let it soak for several hours, or better yet, overnight to let those flavors really sink in. Then, arrange the chicken in a baking dish, pour the marinade over the top, and sprinkle with brown sugar. Add a bit of white wine around the chicken and bake until it's golden brown and bubbling, basting occasionally with those delicious pan juices. And then serve it hot. Chicken marbella is always a crowd pleaser, but if you're looking for a real holiday centerpiece, nothing beats the golden, crispy goodness of a roast goose. 1. Roast goose. Who else misses this golden, crispy centerpiece from Christmases past? If you have ever sat through an old Christmas film or old holiday movie, you might have realized that some of the traditions were not the same as what is today. For instance, in A Christmas Carol, the Cratchit family is preparing a roast goose for their holiday meal before Scrooge surprises them with a big turkey. Preparing a roast goose is simple. Just start with a whole goose. Season generously with salt, pepper, and fresh herbs like thyme and rosemary. Stuff the bird with apples, onions, and garlic to infuse it with extra flavor. Rub the skin with butter or goose fat to ensure it roasts up crispy and golden. As it cooks, baste it occasionally with its own juices and some white wine or apple cider to keep it moist and add depth to the flavor. Just imagine crispy skin, tender meat, rich gravy made from the pan drippings, and all the traditional sides like roasted potatoes, red cabbage, or Brussels sprouts. It was a dish that could make any holiday feel special. Roast goose has deep roots in European cuisine, particularly in Germany and Britain, where it was the star of the Christmas table long before the turkey took over. So, who says we can't bring back the goose? Don't you think it's time to give this forgotten favorite a chance to shine again? Now, which of these dishes do you think deserves a comeback? Or is there a forgotten favorite we missed? Let us know in the comments. Because who knows? Maybe it's time to bring a little bit of the past back to our plates.